Welcome everybody to episode 164 of the Startup Show. Today I'm talking to the CEO and co-founder of Yova, TIllmann Lang, and we are talking about how to move from McKinsey to a startup, but also we talk about Yova and impact investing, how to measure impact, but last but not least is like why you should or you shouldn't start your own company. Make sure to stay tuned for the whole video. Welcome everybody to episode 164 of the Startup Show. Today I'm here at the offices of Yova and I am talking to the CEO and co-founder TIllmann. TIllmann, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you today and talk to you about all kinds of topics around impact. Maybe as usual on the Startup Show, I would like to give you to introduce yourself to my audience for the first minute and a half.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is TIllmann Lang. I'm one of the founders of Yova Impact Investing. I'm actually a techie from background, and I've spent all of my career working on the intersection between sustainability and technology, think about how technology can help create a more sustainable future. And I have many years of experience in the investment sphere, mostly from being an active investor myself and being a bit frustrated by the solutions that are out there, which is part of the reason why we are working on Yova now, to provide something better. I'm a dad, I have a small son, he's 15 years old, and it's quite an intense experience to have the first kid while building a startup, but an awesome one. I live with him and my wife here in Zurich, and we spend a lot of time in the mountains when we can.
One of the things that we saw that you were first in consulting, and then you made the switch into entrepreneurship. How was that transition for you?
It was a good transition, I think. As I mentioned, my background was in tech. I joined consulting because at some point in time, I was very research focused during my university years, and then I realized that the business world is actually quite interesting for me, and joining consulting was a good way for me to get an overview into the problems that are out there and which ones I'm most excited about. But it was always clear that consulting was not my future. And I've always been a very environmentally interested and motivated person. And actually the years at McKinsey, especially my junior years, were always shaped by the thought that it's a great place for me to have a very large impact on sustainability topics, given my level of experience. That changed after a couple of years. So after a couple of years, I felt like actually in the role of an entrepreneur where I can build something myself, I can have a much stronger impact because I felt like I quite understand what the world needs and what the world maybe doesn't need so much more of right now. So that transition was quite a natural one, and it wasn't one that came overnight. I actually left McKinsey the day after being promoted, and I actually left without knowing what I would do next. I did have a couple of ideas in my mind, and I gave myself a year to explore various entrepreneurial ideas with a couple of friends. And Yova is the one that manifested itself and just developed the strongest momentum. So 6 or 7 months after leaving McKinsey, it was the one where I went all in together with my friends and co-founders. The thought process was one that had shaped over years. It wasn't a decision like this.
You know, we always ask the audience what they want to know. And one of the questions they asked me is how you met your co-founders.
Eric, who looks after the product and the technology in our company, and I actually worked together at ETH roughly 7 years ago. When I was doing my PhD at ETH, Eric was doing his master thesis and I was his supervisor. So we worked very closely together on a solar energy research question, which was my most successful project in my academic life. And we became very good friends afterwards. So we worked closely together then we were very close friends for long years. And then we started the company together. And with Christoph, who's actually a good friend of mine from still university times. We didn't study together, but we met at the time. And we've always been in close contact. And my first place in Zurich, I lived with Christoph, and we've always been bouncing ideas. So yeah, we're all good friends for years and years.
I mean, Christoph was also featured once here on my channel. And the last one, before we move more into Yova, which will be the last one, people ask me, they knew about your family situation. They want to know how you can handle, let's say, a startup, family, and friends at the same time.
In a certain way, the startup and the family also handle you. I think it's if that's the situation that happens, you just make it work. I mean, it's difficult to answer that question without drifting off in cliches, but I mean, Jonathan is our first kid, and I mean, there's the question, are you ever ready to have a kid, or is there ever a perfect moment in time? And that's just the way it worked out, and I'm actually super happy about it. Because I mean, one thing that is certainly true about building a company or being an entrepreneur is that usually you get very passionate about what you do, and the downside of that, it's difficult, to not think about it on weekends or on evenings, to balance that out. And actually, having Jonathan is very helpful in that, because like when I'm around him, he really forces me to be present and not to have ideas spinning in the back of my mind. So I think in some ways it can actually be very healthy, at least for the business, to have a kid at the same time. It's obviously, I don't get the best sleep in my life. That's okay. But I mean, it wasn't designed that way, but life is not, you cannot design everything in your life, right? So
good. So let's start talking about Yova. Maybe give everybody out there a short introduction, like what exactly you do here.
Very well. So Yova is an online service for impact investing and sustainable investing. And basically what we offer are long-term investments that help you grow your savings and at the same time have a sustainability impact. And it works very easily. So you just go to the platform, you tell us what you care about. For example, I personally don't want to invest in things that fuel climate change, and I care about things like human rights. But for you, it might be biodiversity or gender equality or something else. And then based on what you tell us about yourself, we select companies that promote the topics you care about. For example, electromobility, or one of the things I said previously, and that match your values. But altogether, it's a portfolio of companies that is a very professionally managed and well-diversified investment. So you really get the best of both worlds. You get a financial return that is the best you can get as a retail investor, but you also have a sustainability impact, and you have a couple of other things on top, because since it's a stock portfolio, you have 100% transparency of what you invest in. You never have this awkward feeling that you don't understand how your investment actually works, that there are black sheep in there. So that's what we offer.
So what is your, let's say, your vision? When you look at Yova, what you're doing right now, like where you want to be in 5 to 10 years?
On a very grand scheme, our vision is to bring sustainability into the mainstream. We are in the financial world right now, or in the investing world even. As it turns out, sustainability doesn't really play a big role. There's a big marketing trend around it. So most providers, and especially the large banks, talk about it and have green products. As it is, when you look at them, most of them are not really green. Most of them are actually very, very ungreen. But for many of them, it's still, say, a sideline topic or something that they also do or that they can also offer. And we want to make sustainability the de facto standard. So whenever you do an investment, or on a larger scale, whenever you do a consumption decision or any kind of decision, sustainability is factored into the decision. We as a company see ourselves, our core is investments. We provide investment solutions that work, that are very easy, but that take care of your future financially and of the world in general. And we want to be the market leader for that, not only in Switzerland, but internationally. So we will internationalize first into the European Union, and we also have plans beyond that.
So quickly, maybe walk me through, you mentioned the KYC that like you have to do with each one, but like what is it like, from a customer perspective? Like what is the process once I select it? How much do I have to pay? How much is the minimum investment?
So the process is, you start, as I mentioned before, you just go to the platform, you sign up, you tell us what you care about, we create your strategy for you, you can see it right away, you can see everything, so each individual company, there's nothing hidden, it's fully transparent, and you can change. So you can say, oh, actually I forgot this topic, I want to add it, so you can optimize your strategy, and you can also even eliminate individual companies. Say, for example, Tesla is a bit of controversial, so if you opt for electromobility, there's a chance we might promote Tesla, and some people love that, other people don't. So you can decide for yourself whether you actually want to invest in them. So you can really optimize your strategy. As soon as you're happy, there's a risk profiling. So we ask you, how much of your money are you investing? Are you investing all your money into Yova or just parts of it? So it determines it a bit about how much risk you can take. Generally, the more risk you can take, also the more return you can expect. It also has to do with the time frame that you have in mind. And then you open an account. What happens then is you open an account with our transaction bank. So you're fully protected by Swiss banking laws. We never hold your money. Your money is actually with the bank in an account that's under your name.
Just in case you close down, yes.
In case you close down. Yeah, but it's emotionally, it's different, right? So when you invest with Yova, once you pay in the money, you actually pay in the money into yourself. It's a bank account in your name. We have power of attorney for the account. We have a discretionary mandate to buy and sell stocks. But for example, what we cannot do is we cannot transfer the assets outside. So it's a very safe setup.
And just about like the costs that are associated?
We charge a management fee, which is a percentage of the money you invest. And that's an all-inclusive fee. That's also something that is quite uncommon in the financial sphere. So with pretty much every investment option that you see out there, they will tell you a fee, but that's not everything you pay. There's then product costs and maybe custody costs for the bank account. With traditional providers, especially the large banks, you will have to pay extra in order to buy the product and also pay extra later to get your money back. So there's a study that Financial Times made it popular that showed that on a usual retail investment, and retail investment is basically any kind of investment that is less than 2 to 5 million at a time. So say you invest 5,000 or 500,000 francs, typically the costs are 4 times higher than you think in the beginning. And with us, that never happens because you have a all-inclusive fee and there are no surprises, no hidden fees ever.
And tell us about the platform by itself. Like where do you stand right now with the development? How many users do you have?
So we launched the full platform in January, so 2.5 months ago. We've been developing it in a very user-centric way. So we've actually been live in the market for longer than that, but only adding small number of customers to really understand what works and what doesn't. And now since January, we're in the stage that we're really scaling up. So right now our team is actually quite busy keeping track. So what we really built, the first thing that we optimized was the whole investment approach. Actually, from a financial perspective, we've just digitized what private banks have been doing manually for 50 to 60 years. We haven't really changed the financial theory, we just applied it and digitized it. What we have really innovated newly is the sustainability analytics, and like how all that interacts with what the customer sees on the web is what we've now launched as a full product in January. And since then, we're just building up. And I mean, the platform will never be finished.
For sure.
So there's still a lot of product development going on. And there are a lot of things that we don't have yet or that are not where we want them to be. We can say with a lot of confidence that it's the best investment solution for any kind of normal retail investor that doesn't have access to a private bank already right now, even if you're not considering sustainability. But then obviously, if you want to invest sustainably, it's pretty much your only good option out there.
One of the questions that I also received was about like they want to know your approach to machine learning, which is also something that like you incorporate within the process of finding new opportunities. Mm-hmm. So what can you elaborate on this?
Yes, so the machine learning comes in the sustainability analytics, not in the financial management so much. So the problem with sustainability analytics, if you look at large companies, they tend to be very complex and they tend to be doing a million different things. There's no single expert could ever tell you this company is good or bad. And even defining what good or bad is a very tricky thing to do. So algorithms can help with that because basically what you have to do is you need to look at a million of different individual data points, all of them just like telling you a fragment about something, and you need to come up with an aggregated opinion. And all of that ideally in real time and continuously because things change, right? So I mean, take Facebook 1.5 years ago and half a year ago after the big data scandal. I mean, they might have been a controversial company from some perspectives beforehand, but data privacy really changed. And the same can happen for a company with what they do. Say they have a local plant somewhere in Africa where they produce Coca-Cola, for example, produces Coca-Cola. How do they deal with the water? It's very difficult to judge that from here. You need to look at local sources. And that's where machine learning can help you by just crawling data and feeding it into the analysis continuously and learning better about what matters and what doesn't matter.
Now let's talk about the term impact. I think that is a very difficult question. I think you also briefly gave me the notion that this is not so simple and not everybody understands the same. Mm-hmm. What is maybe your definition of impact onto the world, onto sustainability, how you define it here within Yova?
That's a very interesting question. So in general, the way we see it at Yova is we don't define what a good world is. Basically, we want to provide people with the tools so they themselves can decide what is the world that they want to live in. So for example, for me, climate change is a big topic and it's one that has been motivating my career for years. But for you, it might be other things, right? It might be more, say good health for everybody, medical technology for everybody, longer living for everybody. So for different people, it's different things. So I can answer that question personally, but not so much in the Yova sense. The Yova approach to sustainability is we have a strong belief that people care. You don't need to convince people that doing good is the right thing. Actually, with impact investing, you don't need to give up to do good. You just get the financial return, but you can do something good at the same time. We just want to empower people to do good, whatever that means for themselves, by providing the tools. So there's no company opinion on that's the right thing and that's the wrong thing. Well, we do have a couple of opinions of what the wrong thing is, obviously, yes. Right? So by default, you will not invest in weapons. By default, we don't like fossil fuels, for example. And by default, we like companies, that protect human rights and gender equality and these kind of things. But for example, I can give you a very concrete example, nuclear energy. For some of our customers, nuclear energy is part of the solution to the climate problem. Other customers of ours are very passionate that nuclear energy is actually
the wrong thing.
Is the wrong thing to do, right? And we don't have a stance for that because we actually understand that both opinions can have merit and I have a personal opinion. I personally would be open in my personal portfolio to have nuclear as a bridging technology, being very aware of all the problems associated with it. I just see the problems as smaller than other problems that we have. But so we don't dictate that to our customers. Our customers can decide for themselves, and we help them. We do give them a lot of guidance and tell them what we think, and we publish a lot of content and expertise, so they're not left alone, but they can take the ultimate decision themselves.
When you look at different platforms that offer, let's say, similar things, what do you point out as your biggest differentiator between all of the different impact investing or investing platforms in general and to Yova?
I mean, a clear differentiator is the duality of having a financial return and an impact. And the impact doesn't compromise your financial return. So it's not getting less of it in order to be sustainable. You actually get the same return you would get elsewhere, but you also get the impact. That's the first thing. The second thing that a lot of our customers really value is the transparency. Even if you don't have a lot of knowledge of finance, you understand how your portfolio works because it's a stock portfolio of 30 to 40 companies, and people understand what a company is and what a stock is and what investing in that means. And we can very easily explain to you how the product works. It doesn't give you this awkward feeling that you often have that you don't really know how an ETF works, who takes the decision, what happens in the end. So you don't invest, in a 16-digit ESIN, you actually invest in companies. And that's the third thing. It's a feeling that it's an investment that can be very emotional. So actually a lot of our customers are really proud of our investments because they're co-owners of these companies. Yeah, so you might invest in Vestas, which is a maker of wind turbines. And then when you go down the highway and you see the wind turbine, you see the Vestas logo, you have a good feeling because you're actually part of this transition towards renewable energy. Or we have many customers that invest in Curated, makers of the flush here from in Rapperswil-Jona, Lake Zurich. And they're actually a very cool company because their technologies help save millions and millions of cubic meters of water, which many people don't know. They're also a great employer, and they're a cool company to invest in. We have customers, and that's more than one, I can tell you that tell us every time I go to the bathroom, I'm super happy when I press the flush because I know this is a great company and I'm invested in it, and I'm using their product every day. So it's a very emotional thing. All of a sudden you have a connection with your investment. Yeah. And that is something that hardly any other provider can offer. And then there's other things. It's very easy to use, it's fun, it's actually exciting because you learn something about sustainability, you learn something about cool companies, what they do, how it works. And that's also something a lot of people appreciate.
Now, one of the biggest critique always, and it's not just by you in general, with fees, you have this annual 1.5% fee, which is fixed no matter how the client are going to be performing in their personal portfolio. Have you ever considered taking just from the upside, or in times where maybe you do not have a certain percentage of yearly gain that you will not take this management fee? I understand that you also have to make money. That's not the point. I'm just saying, in a bigger scope, that you really have this, impact also within your DNA in terms of aligning your interest with the clients.
But that's exactly what I was going to say. This way of having a fee is the best way to align our interests with the clients. First of all, I want to say the 1.5 or how much of a fee you pay depends a bit on how much you invest. The fee actually goes down if you invest more. But the management fee setup that we have is the best way in order to avoid any kind of conflict of interest. So in our model, in our fee model, we have zero conflict of interest because nobody pays us except the clients. So we don't have, to think about what does the provider pay us, or is there any kind of kickback or retrocession, which is the common thing to do in finance, where usually, if I sell the product, I have a very different motivation. I don't need to sell you the best thing, I just sell you the thing that pays me most. Yes. That doesn't exist at Yova, so it's very well aligned. Also with the management fee, we don't have to prioritize anything in terms of, for example, short-term gains. We don't need to go into speculation in order to make more of you. The value proposition that we have is we enable you to participate in market growth. So if the economy goes well, if the market goes up, and the stock markets traditionally go up with 6 to 7% per year, then you participate in that. Our job is not to beat the market. Our job is to help you participate in this market growth. So we never promise that we provide a better return than the market, and we also don't charge you for it. Yeah? So we don't have the high fees of an active managed fund, and we don't have a performance fee. We just have a management fee based on the amount that is invested, and that does align our interest with yours, because if your investment goes up, then also we make a bit more money because it's percentage, and if the investment goes down, then we make less money. So actually, it's the best way to align our interests with yours.
Now, one of the things is always talk about like traction and how you get traction. One of the things that I personally noticed is like all of the social media ads that I get to see all the time. I'm not sure if it's just specifically me or in general, but like I'm curious to know like how social media helped you like to really gain, let's say, this momentum or traction over the last few weeks, months.
Social media works well for us because we have a product that makes people care. You asked about differentiators before. So we don't have, when we run an ad or when we post stuff on Facebook, we don't have to say, hey, we make more money for you or we charge 10 basis points less. We can talk to you about stuff you care about that have something to do with your lives. Sustainability topics, company topics, the climate strikes in Zurich and so forth. And that tends to work very well because people are interested. It's content that has something to do with their lives and that gets them to engage. So our whole marketing strategy is not about, running ads and like convincing people to invest. It's about providing engaging content and getting them to read this content and be interested, and then making them understand, hey, by the way, you can also invest in this, in a good solution. And that's what most people do that. But it's also always about, the content and the message. And social media tends to work quite well for that.
Now, one other question that I'm very curious, because like I think, you see a lot of boards and you see a lot of advisors and stuff like this, but like all the people that I saw that are being like actively somehow involved within Yova is really, really interesting. Some of them were also featured on my show before. Just to point out, let's say a Doodle founder, Mike Neff, or Dominic Gollimund, also very known as a serial entrepreneur. Roger, who works for Swisscom. So all of these like prestigious names. How did you get all of these people like motivated or interested in being part of Yova?
I think they believe in the idea. When we talk to customers, and I've said that, it's this duality of impact and financial return. And I think for our investors, and our advisors, it's a bit of a similar thing. It's a really cool business idea that can scale like hell, but it's also a really good sustainability case. So if we're successful, we're building a great company, but we're also really moving something for the world. And that is something that all of our investors have in common, is that they actually care about both things. So we don't have the people that only care about having a good idea, but it doesn't matter whether it works. And we don't have investors that only care about building a great company and making a lot of money. They are motivated by both things, and it's as you see, quite a wide spectrum, from like very successful corporate managers to successful tech entrepreneurs. And I think for example, on the tech side, what these the two names that you mentioned, Dominic and Mike, find interesting also, that actually our technology is quite innovative and very, very interesting and offers a lot of long-term potential. That has to do with our long-term vision. Maybe I'm preempting one of your next questions now. I'm personally actually quite convinced that 10 years from now, the standard investment will not be funds anymore. Funds are from a time where you needed to pool people and aggregated people because you could not manage individual investments. But nowadays, with modern technology like ours, you can have personalized stock portfolios and manage them quite easily at very little cost. So 10 years from now, the asset manager will not sell a fund or investment in a fund. Instead, he will use software to have the best individualized solution for his client. And that's the kind of technology that we use. So actually, from a technology perspective, we're developing something that offers a lot of opportunity in the future.
So now when you look into the future, what are the immediate next steps that you want to take with Yova? What are the milestones?
Our core focus in 2019 is to scale up the business in Switzerland. What we're doing at the same time is preparing our international entries. We're starting with the European Union. We want to start there with a couple of countries at once. But the way it works, we need to set up an office internationally in one of the European Union countries in order to get access to the marketplace. So those are the two things that we do in 2019 in parallel. Scale up Switzerland to really understand also how to best reach our clients and convince our customers, and then bring the idea to Europe.
Okay, cool. So let's look a little bit into a little bit broader outside of Yova about the impact investing industry in general. What do you see kind of like the trends that you see within impact investing?
So I think the biggest trend is impact investing itself. And I actually don't think it's a trend. I actually think it's a very sustainable movement in itself. I don't think it's something that will fade away. It becomes very important. It's not pushed by the industry, it's actually pulled by investors. Whether it's, a multi-billionaire investing their money or a student having their first job, they start to think about these things. So I think impact investing itself, or sustainable investing itself, is the most important trend. A couple of trends within the topic is, I think there, first of all, more solutions are being developed. We are a good example of that. A big problem within sustainability in general and sustainable finance in particular are analytics. So the kind of data that you have. the way you analyze the data. How do you answer the question, is this company sustainable or not? It's a very tricky question. You always have to work with very messy data. And that solution, I think that's a problem that is getting solved better and better. And I think there are a couple of very cool companies concentrating on this. And we're actually doing that too as part of our job, even though it's not our main focus at this point in time. But I think the sustainability analytics will get better. That's a big trend. And another trend that I very much welcome is that the regulatory side is starting to promote it too. So the European Union, for example, has an action plan on sustainable finance, which feeds into our vision that at some point in time, this is a de facto standard, something that is always factored into the equation. Because an important thing to realize is that there is no such thing as an investment without an impact. So a traditional investment also has an impact. It's just that nobody is aware of what it is, or simply doesn't care, or has no means of controlling. An impact investment is defined as an investment that has a financial return, but also a societal or environmental return. So both sides. So you do something for society and the environment and for yourself. Even a non-impact investment, traditional impact, does something to society and does something to the environment. So something that starts now is just being aware of this fact and making sure that at least you understand what it is, and ideally you can move it into a good direction.
I just participated in the Seed Star Summit, which I'm sure you've heard of. And there is very often impact investing comes together with emerging markets. Mm-hmm. How do you see this trend, let's say emerging markets being part of the vision of impact investing? Do you think they contradict each other? Because many times you have blood diamonds and stuff from places where you would say you have a negative association with impact. How do you see, let's say, emerging markets in the context of impact investing?
I think it's a big and important part of it. I mean, if you think about impact and making the world a better place, obviously the emerging markets, there are many problems to solve. It's not the only part of the world where there are problems to solve. It's like the developed countries too. I think the reason why a lot of people associate impact investing first with emerging markets is because many of the origins of sustainable finance and impact investing are in microfinance, for example. Grameen, the work of Muhammad Yunus, and microfinance in general. And there are great companies, by the way, especially from Switzerland, who really promoted these models and made them big and made them work, both for the people in the emerging countries and for the investors that often are in the developed countries. But I think that is just, those were the first use cases where impact investing and sustainable finance became big, which is why a lot of people connect emerging markets with impact investing. It's in no way contradictory, but it's also in no way comprehensive. There are a lot of problems to solve in the developed world, obviously, and one of the characteristics of the time we live in is that things are immensely interconnected. So you cannot really isolate emerging market world problems from developed world problems. A lot of the problems that exist there are caused here, and some vice versa. So it's about impact investing, if it wants to be successful on a grand scale, cannot only look at emerging markets, and the good news is that it doesn't.
Let's look at the next part about the ecosystem here in Switzerland. In general, number one, from an academic point of view, you have a background at ETH, I guess you did your PhD there. Maybe you can explain a little bit if and how the ETH supported you right now in the process of building your startup.
So the ETH supports in many ways. First of all, they produce a lot of great engineers.
Yes.
So what is great about Zurich especially, but also Switzerland, is you have great access to talent and don't need to convince people to come here to work, because it's a great place to work from a career perspective, but also because the quality of living is high. I came to Zurich to do my PhD and I just never left and now I have a lot of friends here, I have my own ecosystem, but also just because I love going to the mountains and these kind of things. Apart from that, we still have very close links with ETH Zurich. So after finishing my PhD, I actually opened the Sustainability and Business Lab for ETH, which is a lab that focuses on transferring the results from sustainability research into practice with companies. We don't have any formal connection right now, but we're in constant discussion with researchers there. By the way, not only ETH, also University of Zurich, where we are in close cooperation with the Center for Sustainable Finance and Private Wealth, which is managed by Falco Petzold, one of the, from my perspective, the most inspiring people in the sphere of impact investing and sustainable finance, and even other research institutions like the University of Hamburg. So we do benefit from it quite a lot. Of course, both in terms of the talent, but also the methodologies we can use. We actually, whenever we try to come up with a new approach, we test it with people from academia to make sure it's solid and it makes sense and it can really work, which is actually why we're quite confident. So at Yova, we really believe in science methodology. What we do usually has a lot of substance, either because it comes directly from science, or because it really has been tested with scientific methods and has been looked at by scientists.
And now when you look at the local ecosystem in terms of startups and VC, how do you perceive the local ecosystem?
Switzerland and Zurich are great places to build a company, if that answers your question. For a number of reasons. I've already mentioned that it's a good place to, in terms of talent, it's very easy to find talent. If you're looking for an online business model, it's also a great place because, first of all, or in our case, the Swiss as a market, or Switzerland as a market, people are very open to sustainability. And they're also a lot more open for digital solutions than they get credit for, if I may say so. And Swiss design is actually, in the international design community, is a brand, right? So the way design is done in Switzerland is the way to do design. And that's actually also the way that startups in Silicon Valley do design. If you look at all posters from Kunsthaus Zurich that came out 100 years ago, the way they line up grids, that's still used like in design classes, even in Silicon Valley. In terms of access to funding, you asked about VCs. I think it's also a good scope. So when we reach out to international VCs, they tend to listen quite quickly, also based on the ecosystem that we stem from. So I think it's quite a good place to start a company.
How did the nomination for the next Global Hot Thing from the Digital Economy Award affect you? How was that experience for you being part of the nominees?
I think it affected us in two ways. First of all, it got us publicity, which is great. I mean, one of the difficult things as a startup is to become known, and obviously this helps. That just helped us, by making a lot of people aware of what we do. And I think the second thing that was super helpful, it was just a great experience for our team, because we have a super talented and highly motivated team. But given that we are an online business, like most of our interactions are online, but with the Digital Economy Award, actually it became very visible for everybody in the team, from the back-end engineer over the customer success manager to our marketing team, how much people are excited by what we do and how much they believe in the solution, how much they love the solution. So it was a gigantic motivator for the team. It was like, after a year of developing and having a lot of individual feedback, it was just the first time really large-scale recognition, and I think that was a big motivator. So even at the award night, there was a very formal dinner, and we all went there, and everybody was excited. And for the team, it was a really good experience because they can really see how much what we're doing is valued by the outside world.
How do you foster a positive company culture?
I think two things are important, or we find two things important. First of all is feedback. So you need to have a very open feedback culture. And the second thing is very closely connected with that. We actually have a culture where everybody has the obligation to voice their opinion. So everybody has the obligation to listen, everybody has the obligation to voice their opinion. And that is again from the intern on her first day to the founder who's in the company longest. And I think having a very open culture for discussion, that automatically makes people feel safe. They can voice their opinion, they feel appreciated, they feel valued. And I think that is one of the driving factors of a positive culture.
What do you consider success in life?
I consider success in life if two things happen. First of all, when you look back at what has happened, and it doesn't mean that when you're old, but also like in our age or even younger, you need to have peace with what you've done and how you've interacted with the world. But also every day on the way there, you need to be happy with what you're doing. So I'm not a big believer, about tearing yourself up for 10 years in order to then be happy about something, because I don't think that works. I think being happy in life means that you need to be happy every day, and that has a lot to do with deriving meaning from what you do, doing something you really care about, but also working with people that you care about and can be passionate with.
If you look back, how did you turn a failure into a learning experience?
Well, that's something we do a lot. So, the way we develop our platform is very experiment-based. So usually when we have a new idea, we never just believe something, we always test it. And there were a lot of times where we've tested something and the results were quite surprising. Often that is that we really had high hopes that something made everything a lot better, and sometimes the opposite happens, it actually made things worse. And then you just really have to understand, so what happened here? And then that tells you something about the way our customers interact with the platform, also what they care about. And that's the way to turn that into a good learning, because that then helps you make it better in the next step.
What are you looking for when you're hiring someone?
The most important thing for us is that they are a good fit with the company culture. So they need to be super ambitious and hungry. They need to be fully on board with our impact mission. So they really need to be excited about everything we do. They need to be able to work with a positive and open feedback culture. So these cultural things are the most important things. So really hungry people. That's the first thing. And then secondly, obviously they need to be tremendously talented at what they do. So we are a very efficient and small team, and we like to work with people that are driven by achieving the goal that they set out for themselves and are extraordinarily dedicated to it and also creative in achieving it.
Now, one sentence about how you test the first point.
You learn a lot about the culture by just interacting with people. So whenever we hire somebody, everybody from the team meets them by going to lunch together. We also have like speed dating formats where they can be quite stressful for the candidates. So we're thinking about whether that is the best way. But so just getting a gut feel. I'm actually a big believer in trusting your gut. But then we also have we use personal experience interviews. So when, for example, if I want to understand how you are in a crisis or how you deal with feedback, I would ask you, has there ever been a time in a previous job where you received really difficult feedback, something that was difficult for you to take in? What happened? Then I just try to relive the situation and understand a bit how you think about it and how you reflect upon it.
And the last one, how do you keep your productivity high?
Keeping everybody happy. I think happy people are productive, unhappy people are not productive. Creativity for us is key. The key to success is not working 18 hours a day. The key is getting the maximum output, and that happens when people are happy and excited and really passionate about what they do. Do something that matters to you personally. Don't build a startup for the sake of building a startup, because you will not be able to uphold your motivation. Do something you truly, truly care about. And that can be just, you might just be crazy about technology and love to code and come up with a new cool way. That's good. Don't just start a company because you think it's awesome to be an entrepreneur or because it's the quickest way to get rich or something. Those are the companies or the founders that after 1 year or after 3 years, because there will be a time of crisis in any startup story, that will have a very hard time upholding keeping their motivation up.
Very good. TIllmann, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody who tuned in for today's episode. Make sure you stay a few more seconds so you see who is up next week, and I'll see you on Monday. Have a great day.
Hello, my name is Sandra Tobler. I'm co-founder and CEO of Curated. Next week you will hear all about why privacy is actually sexy and fun, and why you should always follow your heart when deciding what career